Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. Obviously, this being the mid-season finale, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we kind of pick up where the end of last episode was. Well, at least we, with the whole Nicole situation, and we kind of get a little more insight. Obviously, to go earlier and kind of show us kind of like the conversations about what was going on. Obviously, they're going to drown her, but they're basically going to put her spirit inside of a frog so that long enough so that they can like break the curse and then like have her come back to her body. So obviously, it's just a situation nobody really wants, but it's kind of like this is like the only option to kind of fixing this, because for Nicole, it's like, I don't want to have to be in a position where I'm killing my friends. So, and obviously having, Nedley being the one having to read the incantations and all that, I thought was kind of interesting. Obviously, Waverly shows up and Jeremy's like, trust me, you just have to trust me. Like, she's going to go into the frog. It's like, you turned my girlfriend into a frog. So that's a whole thing. At the same time, Mama Clanton kind of realizes what they're trying to do, and so she sends, out of anyone she could have, she sent Billy. Obviously, it's the whole point she turned Billy into a Reaper, because she wants him, because it's like, oh, you're kind of an Earp lover now. You love someone who is an Earp lover, so it's like, you've kind of betrayed us. So it's like, it's almost supposed to be this poetic, ironic justice of like, you being the one that kind of hurts them because you chose not to beforehand. So sending him to go after Waverly. Obviously, Rachel kind of gets sight of that, and then she gets grabbed by Holt. And I was curious where that was going to go, but we'll get to that soon enough. But at the same time, Wynonna and Doc are dealing with the whole Rosita situation. I was like, how the hell are you alive? How are you the only Revenant that's around? Like, how did you do that? Well, it's like, basically, what was she saying? What did she say? Like, Creepy Pete or whatever? Like, a Revenant came after her because it's like, oh yeah, like, it's like, well, what did you do? Try to steal their baby? It's like, I slept with his wife. And it's like, what was it Doc said? He was almost like, oh, how like devilish of you or something like that. I know I'm butchering it. But he was like, I would love to know the details, And then Wynonna's just looking at him. He's looking at him like, sorry about that. And also she's like, oh yeah, because basically Rosita said that this rock formation is supposed to kind of like, it's supposed to make Revenants feel like they're being torn inside out. But she's like, I have a high pain tolerance. You know that better than anyone, Doc. And she smiles towards him, and Doc's almost kind of smile. And then Wynonna looks at him again, and it's just kind of like, oh, this is awkward, because it's like, right, you forgot. I did let it slip. Can't let it slip my mind that these two had a history. They were kind of banging for a while. But obviously, it's a situation of like, if you step out of that rock formation, she knows, because Creepy Pete or whatever was there with her when the rest of the Revenants disappeared, but being in that formation kept them from disappearing. So it's like, if you step off of it, she knows, because she kicked Creepy Pete off of it, and it's like, oh, he ended up disappearing, so she knows if she does, she'll die too. So it's a situation of like, wait, you guys just want to kill me? And it's like, no, because they end up explaining, because obviously she's been out here, so she didn't know, like, oh, the tremor you felt and all that, yeah, that was bull shards, so like the curse is broken, so there's like no more bad blood between us. So it is a situation of like, they need her in this whole way to get back Peacemaker and everything. So basically, they lay down, and I love the way Wynonna was like, we have to put all these rocks down. We can use them as like the way she said Rosita's name, like, and it's just, I love that. Because it just showed you, like, obviously, like how, I mean, understandably, like, Wynonna has every right to be pissed. Like, obviously, you try to steal my baby, so there's all that. Well, I think it also hurts too, because obviously, like, Wynonna was actually thinking her and Rosita could have been buds, especially how well their personalities gel together, how similar they kind of are. They would have actually been good friends if things didn't turn out the way they did. But regardless, they're planning to lay out the stones. I was like, oh man, that's going to take a long ass time. But obviously it's a thing of like, all right, promise me, pinky swear that you won't harm me. And then like you had Doc about ready to do it, and Wynonna was like, what are you doing? What are we, kids? It's like, pinky swear. And I'm like, I love how old-fashioned she is, that she's like, a pinky swear. And it's like, all right, I won't lay a hand on your hair out of place for you. And it's like, or the rest of my body, the devil's in the details and stuff like that. So they agree to it and everything. And I love it being like, Wynonna being like, oh, I forgot how good you smell. And she's like, thanks. I love that. But then it's like, I was like, oh, you're going to have to go all the way. It's like, oh, nope, shortcuts there. Obviously, Wynonna and Rosita jump in. Obviously, we'll get to Doc's situation soon enough. But the moment they get there, it's kind of like, all right, Rosita here. Rosita's like, what are they going to do with me? It's like, you never told me this was part of the plan. It's like, okay, I promised I wouldn't kill you, and I wouldn't. And the fact of the matter is, I need to get, Peacemaker back. Because obviously for Rosita, it's like, it's already been enough of like women turning on women. So like, why are we adding fuel to that fire? But then the nun is like, oh, there's a lot of tension and hate between you two. Fight it out, duke it out to the death. So it almost turns into a schoolyard fight where like people are circling around you. I mean, to be fair, it's like any fight, like a prison fight or whatever. Just like all the nuns being like, yeah. I'm like, this is super messed up. Obviously, Wynonna was like, oh, we don't have to do Rosita strikes and everything, but it's obviously both of them like are about survival and stuff like that. I do like that. During the fight, she uses a move, and she's like, yeah, thanks, dolls. You're like, I remember you working on that particular move with dolls. I was like, oh, that's a little sweet, nice, carryover. But I love the whole situation. I love that line from Rosita where she was basically like, the more you choke me, the harder I get. And Wynonna's like, ugh, I love that line. But then it turns out the nun herself is actually a demon, and it's like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? All right, so let's kind of join forces because we can't give this lady what she wants. And it's like, Wynonna's like, is that a Hemsworth in like swim trunks or shorts or whatever? And Rosita's like, is that the Xeno reboot? And all the nuns are turning for each of those things. I love it. And so they run for their lives. I even love that Wynonna, like, despite her dislike of Rosita, kind of complimented her on her chest. Like, what was it? Your perfect ample chest or something like that. But nevertheless, they're trying to find weapons. And I like that line from Wynonna where it was basically like, obviously she's getting pissed at Peacemaker because it's like, you think your job is done. It's not. The fact of the matter is basically saying I'm a hero. And, kind of saying like, you're the one you think your job is done. The job isn't done. The fact of the matter is, obviously, there's so many people she has to protect. The fight keeps going, whether you think it's all over because of the revenants and everything. And it's like, yes, I'm a hero. And yes, that sometimes means I have to kill people. So I guess coming to terms with a lot of that, I guess is what Peacemaker needed to hear, or I don't know. It was interesting, though, like her kind of going all Jedi, like summoning the sword to her, then it turns into a gun. And I guess the lady didn't realize what Peacemaker was. It's like, oh, a man-made weapon can't harm me. And it's like, and Wynonna leans over to Rosita. It's like, should I tell her? And Rosita's like, nah. And then it's like, make your peace. And I'm just like, once again, I like that. That's such a good, I never give that enough credit. That is such a good tagline, especially with the gun being Peacemaker and what it's supposed to represent. Make your peace. Because it's obviously it's so Western, ish as well. So it's like, it's I've never given that line as much credit. Just even in that moment, her saying it again, make your peace. It's like, oh, it sends chills down your spine. Because I'm like, I'm gushing about it right now, but it's like in the past 3 seasons, I've never given that line the due credit that's a good fucking tagline. I'm sorry. It just I felt like saying that because I was just like, oh, like it hit me because it feels so powerful to her finally getting Peacemaker back after all this time too. So I don't know. Part of me was kind of wondering, was like, oh, is it going to stay in a sword or is it going to be a gun again? Nope, it's going to be a gun again. But regardless. But then all the other nuns are like, oh my God, you set us free. That's amazing. And it's like, oh. So basically they were kind of held here a little bit. So they're willing to follow Wynonna. I was like, oh my God, does Wynonna have her own army of nuns now? But it's like, she's like, nah. Like, she's like, I'm not the one that should, because she's like, I'm all tainted. So it's like, I'm not the person for this. But you guys should be free. But then like Rosita points out who these women are. She knows them. And it's like, how do you know them? It's like, they were all women killed by Wyatt. And it's like, And then she finally asked Rosita, how did you? And like Rosita's like, she was collateral damage. Wrong place, wrong time type of situation. But what it is, and obviously for Wynonna, it's that thing of like, oh yeah, more things about like my ancestor, like once again kind of learning now, because he's heralded as his hero, and now like as time is going on, she's starting to learn more and more like, might not have been the best person, especially all these women that were killed and everything. So it's just kind of like because that probably had something to do with the time as well, so who he was back then along with what the times represent, but Rosita's planning to stay here because obviously like she went from one curse, but here I think she can freedom is fine for Wynonna, but obviously this is kind of a safe place for them and her, gives her kind of a new chance. And obviously being surrounded by certain people, and it's like, all right, Wynonna being like, you do you, and you, and you, and you, and you. I love that. But then like Rosita drops some info on her, like, okay, the whole Alice situation, I wasn't just stealing it for, my own self-preservation. To a certain extent, yes, it all folds under that, but it was also because I had a buyer, the Clantons. So it's like everything kind of comes full circle. It's like Rosita was going to give the baby to the Clantons, but even then, like, we never actually find out why. But I was like, why were the Clantons so interested? And I guess it's because, for one, either they were going to take Alice and raise Alice as a Clanton. It's probably stretching it too far. I kind of lean lesser on that side, but I think it's also because Alice is a union of Doc Holliday and Earp. So it's like you carry the bloodline of two bloodlines despised by the Clantons, because we do find out in the episode from Nicole the reason why, because obviously everything that goes down, like obviously at Shorty's, the fact of the matter is you had Billy showing up attacking Waverly. The fact of the matter is Nicole exits the frog. It ends up pushing Billy into the basement, and so obviously Waverly having to go all Princess and the Frog, kissing the frogs, and I even love Nicole being like, oh, gross, kind of like, it's like, but obviously she's doing it out of love, which is interesting because it kind of lends itself more kind of to like the 2008 Princess and the Frog movie, kind of like, oh, kissing the frog isn't necessarily, it doesn't work the way you, like, obviously they remixed it, so it almost kind of falls more in that lane of things. But what I thought was really interesting, though, it's like, obviously Nicole giving like Morse code with the lights and stuff like that, and I love that Jeremy was like, oh, like she got one letter wrong at the very end. They're like, all right, you get the point, because it's like instead of frog it was frob, but it's like, you get the point. And then also it's like, oh, you want us to go in the basement, DUH, and it's like, duh, and it's like, okay, yep. And Nedley being like, yeah, that's Nicole, all right. But I also love that he was like, oh yeah, he knows all about astral projection, because he's like, it happened after my third heart attack, I found the remote on top of the refrigerator or something like that. And I'm like, no one's going to talk about what Nedley just said? We're just going to skip right over that. Okay, come on, that's so weird and interesting. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, by possessing Billy, like, obviously, like, Nicole is able to kind of give them the full story about everything. That basically, Nicole, well, because, I believe, that is when she ends up telling her that basically, and I figured as much. I knew this had something to do with Doc because of last episode. The moment Doc showed up, Nicole got violently ill without even saying anything, because he was part of the pact. And it's like, it makes sense why Mama Clanton would want him, because it's like, coming after the Earps is one thing. It's like, obviously your hate for them is never going to die, but Doc's a different situation, because this isn't like a descendant of Doc's with the Earps. I mean, granted, like I said, you're still going to hate the Earps, but it's like, Doc is Doc. It's like, this is the man directly connected. You can get your revenge on the Earps' descendants. You can get on Wyatt's descendants, but you can get revenge on Doc specifically. So that's what I was, that was interesting to find out, that it was Doc specifically. He was the price. A life for a life. So to bring Waverly back, Doc had to be the price. And what was interesting is when Mama Clanton basically explained that because of the blood feud between them, that hate is a strong connection. That's why Doc was able to find the doorway, because that connection between them, that hate, opened up a pathway to kind of lead them there. So it's interesting how and obviously that's an interesting aspect of this season. It's like, obviously it's like a cycle of hate, like what you do with it, because obviously at the same time this is all going down, Doc is trying to talk to Holt, because I was like wondering, it's like, what's he going to do with Rachel, and he just lets Rachel go. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he's basically talking with Doc. He's like, what you brought up last episode is interesting. He's like, the fact of the matter is that kind of like the blood spill is basically on the damn us all, so he doesn't want things to kind of continue this way, and neither does Doc. It's like, this could be a new beginning. I mean, he's like, look at Rachel and Billy, basically kind of, they're on like some Romeo and Juliet type of thing, so it's like, maybe they could be the ones that kind of help broker peace. Like, we can change things. It's like, so Doc is talking to Holt about talking to his mom about somehow, mediating some peace. I think in the long run, it would have never worked, because I think Holt Cleo, who knows? Like, Cleo seems like she teeters on, like, she definitely holds that hate. Holt might, but even then, he isn't fully poisoned with it, because obviously it's like us fighting for something that happened so long ago. And the fact of the matter is, obviously, Billy wasn't completely poisoned by it either, but it's like, if anything, their mom is completely poisoned by it. Cleo, it's hard to say, but I mean, obviously, the way she kind of hated, like, Wynonna immediately and made it clear, but it's like, you grew up in that hate, you were raised on that hate. I mean, but even the fact is, Holt kind of tilted on it, I think, kind of spoke volumes too. So it's like, all right, let's kind of mediate this situation. So obviously, Waverly wanting to break the curse, a life for a life. It's like, if I deal with Mama Clanton, then everything will be done. So she goes there and confronts her. And so even that whole thing keeps coming up. Why do you keep bringing up something from the past so long ago? Which, once again, that's a beautiful message about this show, because the entire show is about the past. In the grand scheme of things. I mean, when you actually break it down, it's sad, because the entirety, almost everything, falls back to Wyatt. Things he did, both the more honorable and the less honorable things, whether it be like the Revenant or whether it be the Clantons, everything is them dealing with his actions in the past. Like I said, those that were justified and those that weren't, and so in the grand scheme of things, like, Waverly ends up killing Mama Clanton. And I think it's interesting, because obviously she didn't mean to do it, but it's like, this happened again, where it's like that, I don't know whether it's that angel side in her, like, maybe it has something to do with meeting Eve, maybe that amplified something, or maybe it's just her angel side, either way, being like, because it might be her angel side being like, you're evil, I need to purify you, like, that instinct is there. Like, obviously she's used it on purpose before, because obviously she did with Bobo, but this situation, and she kind of, I mean, and I think, once again, it fuels this cycle of hate. She gave into her anger. It's like, you did this, you're gonna try and hurt Doc, you are you did this to Nicole, like, you fed off her desperation, her sadness, trying to find us again, being reunited with me, and she ends up killing her. And obviously it hits her like, oh my god, what did I do, Because it's one thing, once again, it still hits you because you're still killing someone regardless. But prior to this, she did it to Bobo. But this time, it's like she did it to someone that was, granted, what they really are is still not 100%. I mean, it seems like they're more human than anything else. So it's like, she killed her. And obviously, it's like Holt comes back to find his mom. Wynonna got back with Peacemaker, and she meets up with Waverly. Luckily, it's a draw now, because it's like guns drawn and everything, and Holt, it's like, you killed my mom. The fact of the matter is, this could have been an opportunity to end it, but now we can't. Doc shows up, and it's like, no, there's been enough blood spilled, and he talks about the deal him and Holt made. It's like, we can end this. Things don't have to kind of keep going. We can end this here. We can do better. It's like, yes, Billy was an innocent. There's been a lot of innocent people mixed up in this feud, but the fact of the matter is, we can find. It's like, this family's had, the Clantons have had to shoulder this burden of this feud for so long. So it's like, let us kind of lighten the load, and let's kind of take this going forward, because even Holt had said it himself. He's like, I'm in a position where I can do good for this town. The fact of the matter is, he didn't want it. He wasn't just in this position just for his family. It's like, no, I can do some good. I don't have to just be connected to my family's past. That doesn't have to just be me. I can find my own path. And Doc was like, all right, let's get a drink. And as they're walking away, Holt gets shot in the back. I was like, wait, please tell me it was somebody else, please. And it's like, nope, Wynonna did it. And Doc is like, what are you doing? And she's like, thanks for distracting him. And it's like, Waverly didn't say anything either. She just kind of went along with it. And it's just like, Doc is like, and obviously later on, it's, Doc is kind of like, obviously upset with her. And it's like, and then she, because obviously it's like, because Doc didn't like what Wynonna did. For one, it's like, you shot him in the back. There's no honor to that. And she's like, I've been through so much. I've had to fight so much to protect my family and myself. Like, we've been attacked by the townspeople, revenants, demons. Like, there's always been an attack on our lives. And you think I care about honor? Because I think this is the first instance of her ever doing that. Anytime she's ever shot anyone, it's always been face to face. So there's always been some honor to it. Yes, you've killed people. And, but it's like, I think Doc looked at this situation way different, because he was lowering his arms. He wasn't trying to fight anymore. We could have found a better way. But like, for Wynonna, it's like, I get it. Like, it's like, that's why she likes Doc so much, because it's like, you are kind of just as broken on the inside as me. But Doc is like, I don't want to be that way anymore. Because for him, because it comes up, she's like, oh, because, Wyatt exposed you about the OK Corral thing. And he's like, oh, you think that's the truth? And he ends up explaining, like, I had to do the cleanup. It's because, once again, what did he say last episode that Doc was like, wait, what? He was like, that Doc fired the first shot. And he's like, what? And the way he was reacting, he's like, no, I didn't. Wyatt started. He was like, you shot off the first shot and then you ran. I had to be the one to clean everything up. He's like, did you ever wonder why the Clantons never became revenants? Because I was the one who killed him. And for Doc, this was an opportunity not only to end this blood feud, but also for him to make up for a mistake he made in the past. Because their blood, the Clantons' blood, is not only on Wyatt's hand, it's mainly on his. So this was, I think, an opportunity to make up for the past. Because I brought it up before. Like, let's not forget, Doc saw himself going to hell. So I think somewhere on that in his mind is like, this is an opportunity to make things better, to make amends to the past, his past, make up for it. And this would have been an opportunity, but now that opportunity is gone. Because sadly, once again, it's this cycle of hate that kind of, keeps repeating, because it's like, we had an opportunity to end it, but it's like, Mama Clanton would never have let go of her hate. And obviously Wynonna kind of holds on to some of her hate, because it's like, they would have kept coming after us regardless, But it's like, you don't know. Taking someone down before you get... I mean, to be fair, she's been in a position where, like, you give people chances over and over again. Bobo was a prime example of that. He just kind of kept coming back and making things worse for them. So it's like, are you willing to give an enemy like this, who's going through so much, who's put you through so much, or are you willing to give them a second shot? Because it's like, like I said, Mama Clanton probably wouldn't, but Holt... he would have, I think, because he leaned more towards Billy being like, oh, we can fix this. Like, things don't have to be this way. And so, because also Wynonna was driven by the fact that what she learned from Rosita is like, oh, you're going to try and take my baby. Who knows what you would have done to Alice? So I think that fury, that anger, Rosita telling her that ahead of time, before everything, that might have been the tipping point. Who knows? Like, if Rosita hadn't told her that, maybe, Wynonna would have been a little bit more okay with listening to this whole situation. Who knows? I mean, it's just, at this point, it's a what-if situation. We don't know how things really would have turned out. But it's like... because all this does, though, is create an even worse situation. Because now, the only Clanton left... is Cleo, and she's going to be driven by rage. Like, even if she teetered, she's full-blown hating the Earps. You've killed her mom. Her brother is dead because of you. Because, because in her mind, it's like, Earps did that. Because it's like, so, and I doubt she's willing to forgive Doc, because it's like, oh, you played your part in it, you're an Earp lover. So, like, she's going to be driven purely by revenge. It's like, you created an even worse, potentially an even worse situation for yourself, because Cleo's not going to be someone that you can appease now that her brother and her mom is gone. Now her other brother's stuck as a not a revenant, but a Reaper too. Like, without her around, like, Billy's probably stuck that way. Or maybe it's a thing of now that that's happened, like, maybe he's free, and in the sense of maybe he's just kind of moved on now. Like, once you become a Reaper, you're dead, and there's no coming back, there's no reversing it. So he might be, or maybe he is still stuck as a Reaper, who knows. But it's like, this moment right here changed everything, like, for Doc and Wynonna. And it's interesting because basically the way Mama Clanton was talking about it, she wanted them to destroy themselves. This might be the beginning of that, because obviously, like, this whole situation, like, we kind of get a clip in a previews of, like, Wynonna drinking. I think, like, her and Doc not being on the same side again, like, this is different than, like, when he became a vampire and everything. This is different, like, he doesn't look at her the same way anymore. Because for him, because it's like, oh, you and that gun, I guess you kind of meant for each other. Because it's like, it's almost like with that gun in hand, it's almost like you're so thirsty for blood. You're so quick and so willing to, like, it's like, because I think for him, it's almost like, now I see you becoming more like Wyatt, and that's not a good thing. Maybe in the beginning, it kind of was, it's like, at least you had some honor to it, but then it's like, now it's a situation where it's like, maybe he fears that Wynonna's becoming more like Wyatt's more dishonorable side, that he was just kind of a killer. Because, like, even he looks back on, like, the only difference between us and the Clintons was the fact is that we had a badge. That's the only difference between what they were doing, what we were doing, So So obviously there is a beauty to it in the sense that like, okay, it's interesting because like as things are working out between Nicole and Waverly, like, Waverly proposes to her and Nicole says yes, so everyone's celebrating. While that's happening, the thing between Doc and Wynonna is making things worse. I wonder, did they ever tell Rachel about Billy or not? Like, because it doesn't seem like she knows, because I feel like if she knew, she'd be a little more upset. So that might be something they're kind of keeping from her. Who knows? But things aren't going to be like, it's like they're finally all reunited. Everything's, we've weighed through this, so whatever comes next, we'll face it together. But it's like, I don't know. It seems like Doc might start pulling away just because of what Wynonna did, And I think maybe that's hitting her, like what she did, or at the very least, the way Doc is looking at her because of what she did, And it's like, I think that's going to be a heavy, once again, it's an endless cycle of hate. It's just like one act of hate beget another, and so on and so forth. It's like, when will this ever end? This was supposed to be their opportunity to end it, but sadly, that wasn't the case. So, wild mid-season finale. I'm so interested to ultimately see like where all this ends up taking us going forward. Like I said, with the whole Cleo thing, still plenty of demons running rampant in purgatory and everything. So it's like, what's that look like? I mean, now that like Holt is gone, I mean, that position as sheriff is open, so I'm assuming Nicole's potentially going to take it. I mean, she was going to be sheriff again anyway. I'm sure there's still a lot about Jeremy's side of things, especially the Robin thing. Like, I'm sure we've kind of dealt with Nicole's side of things about like what she had to do in that time. I mean, I'm sure there might be even more to it. Maybe not. But at least with Jeremy, there's still a lot of Black Badge related stuff that's still kind of up in the air. But I think we're probably going to lean more into that now, while still potentially dealing with the aftermath of this Clanton situation. And like I said, what this all means for Doc and Wynonna. Granted, we don't get a specific date. All it said is 2021. I guess maybe they're figuring stuff out, because I'm curious like how much of this season was filmed, because I haven't looked into it, so I don't know if they're doing this because not all of the season was filmed prior to this, or is it just they're spread. I don't know. I'm curious to see what the reason was. Kind of doesn't matter, but we won't be getting the rest of the season potentially until next year sometime. So I guess that's why they just kept it vague, because of productions are all up in the air of like when we'll be able to pick things up again. You never know. So, but I'm so curious to see, like I said, where the second half of this season is going to take us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.